Alright guys, welcome back to Mr. Post Frame. Today's show is going to be part 3 of our MRCOOL mini split installation series. Today we're going to cover the electrical, we're going to cover startup and testing, and we're going to cover my initial thoughts after using this for a few weeks and how I think it will be for a DIY person to install. But before we get started guys, don't forget, we are Barndominium builders here in the Midwest. We design Barndominiums all over the country. So if you are looking to design your own Barndominium, reach out to us, design at Mr. Post Frame. We can help you out with that. Also, if you are a DIY person and want to self-build your own post frame garage, shop, Barndominium, we have a Patreon group dedicated just to DIY people. It's a great community of other DIY builders. You guys get to ask me questions. We do lives. We bring on guests sometimes. It's just a great thing to be a part of, to gather more information. Everybody shares their build, the things they wish they would have done differently or maybe would have changed. So it's a great opportunity if you're going to self-build, so check that out. But let's go ahead and jump into the show. Now what I have to do is I have to run power from my breaker box, and this is a big debate with mini splits, whether you have to have a disconnect for the outside condenser as well as for the each individual air handler. And in my opinion, the NEC is kind of like criminal code. It's kind of left up to the interpretation of whoever's reading it. And if you think about like a traditional HVAC system, you have to have a disconnect within eyesight of the condenser. So I have that on my traditional HVAC systems, and then your air handler inside has a separate branch circuit. So a traditional HVAC system has 2 branch circuits. So you have a disconnect at your condenser outside, and then you have a switch that you can cut the power to the air handler. A mini split system has 1 branch circuit, so all of the air handlers that are inside get their power from this condenser. So we run power here, and then we have lines that come, electrical lines that come from each air handler that hook up here and get their power from here. So in my opinion, in where we are, you only need a disconnect outside to cut power to this unit. So, and we have to use a little common sense, in my opinion, on this, in the fact that if this is a residential, a residence, which it is, if I come here to work on this and I want to work on an air handler, I'm going to cut the power to the condenser, which will kill the whole system, because I know that I can easily identify where the condenser is. I can shut the power off. If you're in a commercial setting, it might be a little different. Maybe you have 3 or 4 of these sitting on a rooftop and you don't know which, maybe they're not labeled very well, and you don't know which condenser the head is hooked up to. So in that case, maybe it would be better to have a switch where you can cut the power to the air handler. So I'm going to leave it at that. If you don't know, if you're not familiar with electricity, you should leave that to somebody that does. I feel quite confident to wire this up, so I'm going to do it. So this, I need a minimum 40 amp breaker. I have that. I need to install that in my box. I have the proper size wire. I'm going to run it up into my attic, across, drop it down in this wall, because I have this wall exposed on the inside, and then I'm going to put a disconnect right up here, which is obviously within eyesight of this unit. So if I ever need to work on an air handler inside the house that's on this unit, I just come out here and I shut this off, or I can shut the breaker off. That's my opinion. That's what I'm going to do, so I'm going to get after it. Alright guys, we have a few things here. We have a disconnect box. This is the box that's going to mount on the wall. And when you pull that out, that kills the power. So if it's up like that, you can say it's off. It's turned like that. Then it's on. So those go in there, make the connection. This is so if you want to work on your unit outside, you can just pull this out. Kind of a safety thing. So that's one thing you need for the electrical. You need the appropriate size breaker. I have a square D box, so I have a square D breaker. And then I have a whip, which this is just a pre-made up conduit with the proper size wires in it to go from my disconnect to my condenser unit. So I can actually cut this down if it's too long, if I need to. And it comes with a couple different ends. One so I can go into the disconnect box, and one so I can go into the actual unit. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my wire and I'm going to run it from my box to where this location is going to be. Alright, it's Saturday and it's electrical day for my mini split, so I've got my main panel all uncovered. I have this trough up here, and then I have some 2-inch nipple that goes up into the attic space, and I'm going to use that to take my line up in the attic down to where I want it. But I do have to put in another conduit from the trough down to the main panel so that I can get my breaker in, get that all, have a way to bring the wire down into here, because those, they're not completely full, but I don't want to shove this big wire in there. It would get me close to being over capacity on those. So we're going to run another conduit down and into the box. I'm going to do that, then I'll get up in the attic and start feeding my wire down into here and get it down as far as I need it. Alright, you can see we got our conduit in. Now I'm going to get up in the attic. I got to pull a bunch of insulation away, and then we'll feed our line down through here, get it down into the box so it's long enough, and then we'll get it over to where it comes down the wall to go out to the condenser. Got my fan going to try to move some air because it's going to be hot up here. So right over there is where my conduit comes up, and then I got to run that line to this side of the fourth truss. So 1, 2, 3, ooh, that's a ways. Guys, here's my wire that comes down this nipple from the attic space. So this is legal as long as this is less than 2 feet. You can run Romex in it, covered wire, but I stripped it here, back to here, ran it down in here, and I've got my wires all right here. I just tucked them over here so there's no chance they can flip over here and hit anything they're not supposed to. And I'm going to wait to the very end to hook these up. That way I can assure myself there's no power going into this line while I'm working on it. And then once I get everything hooked up, I'll come in here and do my final connection here. I do have to replace a couple of these 20 amp breakers with a 40 amp dual space breaker. Alright, so we have our line fished through the webs of the truss where I want it. Got it down, ran into the electrical box. Sorry, my eyes are itching from all this fiberglass insulation, but I just got to drill a hole next to this column, and then I can run my wire down. Once I get it out to where I need it to, whatever excess wire I have, I will coil it up here, so I know if I ever have an issue or I need to cut some wire off for some odd reason. I don't know why I would, but I'm gonna leave the extra up here. I had this piece of wire, so, and then I'll tidy all this up, put wire staples in it where I need to, and we'll be done up here. So not doing too bad. I'm just using a little small rake to get my insulation out of the way. Drill my hole down. Might as well grab my wire too. Alright, now that we got our power line ran, I'm going to go outside and mount my cutoff switch, and or my disconnect switch, whatever you want to call it. And then I'll put a piece of conduit on the back so it'll stub through the wall, and then I can run this wire right into that disconnect box and hook it all up, fill the rest of the hole with spray foam, and we should be good on this end, and then I can work my way back to the box, securing the wire. Alright, you can see I have a hole drilled. This is where all I did was put a little connector on here, just so my wire has something to feed through that's going to not have sharp edges. And what I'm going to do is take some of this sealing clay, roll it out, wrap it around here. That might be a little much, but this will, as I press this up against the wall, it will seal around there, and then from the inside I will seal it with spray foam. So this essentially will do things. One, it'll keep any water from coming down along the wall and somehow getting in here. And then two, it'll also seal that hole, so when I put the spray foam on the inside, I don't have spray foam coming onto the outside, and I'll have a nice airtight seal. So I'm going to go ahead and get this box mounted, and then I can run my wire through. So if you can see, it shows you line and load. So my wires coming from my box will be the line. So my two hots will go to the lines. Obviously, equipment ground terminal, and then my load, my two hot wires from the condenser will go to the load. So I'm going to get that hooked up and then start working my way back. Alright, so right there on the unit is our main power hookup. We have line 1, line 2, and the ground. So I gotta hook my wires up to that, and then I'll hook them up in the disconnect. These two right here are from the panel, that's our line. Our load is the condenser, so it's these two. And then we have our grounds hooked up here. And then right here we have two hots hooked up to L1, L2, and the ground. So now I just gotta hook all my air handlers up to here, and all these are labeled with 1A, 2A, and 3A. And if you look at all of these, they all have numbers on them. So if this is A, I hook 2 up to 2A. Pretty simple. You guys can see how easy this is. It's got 1A, 2A, 3A, and so that is a 1, that's a 2, and that's a 3. from the A line set. So pretty simple, you just hook those up, same here. 1B, 2B, 3B, and so on and so forth. And then there's ground terminals for your grounds back there. So all this wiring is done except for my last head, which I'll probably wait to install that until I get the room finished. But I have 3 out of the 4 hooked up. Got my power hooked up there. Now I just need to follow this line back, securing it back to the electrical box and hook it up there. And then we can go through and start opening lines and testing them and seeing how it works. Alright guys, here's my wire that comes in. So here's my breaker that I needed. Got my 2 hots hooked up. Ground is hooked to the ground bar over there. I ran a new piece of conduit right there and brought that wire down in here. So I just got to cover all this up now. We're hooked up. Ready to go. I just have to open all the valves and then we can start testing this thing. Alright, I'm going through my checklist so I can start this thing up. I have got everything ran. I've got the drains ran. I've got power all ran. So before I power it up, turn the breaker on and all that kind of stuff, I'm just going through the checklist that's in the book. And each one of these heads on the wall has a USB controller. So there's an app on your smartphone that you can run them all from. So I'm getting those installed, and then I can later install the app once I know everything's up and running right. We'll get this out and install it. It's pretty easy. These are directional, so there's 2 ways. Mine says to put it in like this. So you gotta take the front, pull the front of this open. It just pulls up open like that. And then, see if I can show you up underneath here. That is where it plugs in right there. So just slide that in there. Make sure it seats all the way, and that's it. So now I have all of the USB things mounted in here in all of the heads. So I'm going to just run through one more time, make sure I got everything hooked up, turn the power on, open the valves, and see if we can't fire these things up. Alright, so it's time to open all these valves. So I'm going to open both those, and then I have to open those king valves. I'll tidy all this up later once I know everything's working properly. And then we'll check everything for leaks. Have these 3 sets open. Now I'm going to open these king valves here, turn the power on, and check each of the 3 heads, make sure they're heating, cooling, check all the connections for leaks while they're doing it. And once I know everything's good, then I'll go back and tape up and insulate all the connection points, tidy everything up, and make sure we're all good. Alright, so now that we have tested all of our units, we can go ahead and wrap all of the joints with this sound deadening material. It's almost like it's a real thick, like sticky rubber membrane. So we'll wrap all those connections, wrap them, get them all sealed up, insulated, put our cover on here, and then the outside will be wrapped up and I can just kind of start tidying everything up on the inside. But it's much quieter than I thought it was going to be, the outdoor condenser. I'm not sure, probably half as loud as like my Amana condensers that I got outside for my typical HVAC system. So it's really quiet. So I'm not sure why in the manual it says to place it in somewhere where it's not going to bother people, because it's so quiet you can't even really tell it's even running. But we're going to get these wrapped up. I'm supposed to get a bunch of rain tonight, which is awesome, so I'm going to want to get everything outside kind of tidied up before that happens. Alright, so we have the unit all hooked up, electrical, plumbing. We've tested all the leaks with soapy water solution. I just use like Dawn dishwasher soap in a spray bottle, and then I will spray the connections. I've done all that. Now it's time to test the units and see how they're working. So the first step is we've got a remote, I've got our batteries in it, and I'm gonna turn this unit on and I'm gonna turn it to the cooling mode, and I'm gonna let it run for 5 minutes, make sure everything's operating fine. I'm gonna spray my connection points to make sure I have no leaks, because it will gain a little more pressure as the system starts running. And then we will check the heating, because this is also a heat pump, so it runs in reverse and creates heat. So two things with that. One, on cooling mode, the condensation is going to come from this unit in here, so I'm going to check my condensation lines, make sure they're draining properly. And then if it's running as a heat pump, the condensation is going to come from outside. So I guess let's go ahead and power this up and see how we did. Alright, so I'm getting ready to test my unit, but I'm going to go ahead and hang this remote control holder, and I don't really want to put screws in the metal because I don't know, we might want to move this, so I'm just using a command strip. My wife used these for everything. I kind of hate them, but I decided I would use them for this. But I'm just going to stick that right there. That way I can mount my remote control right there. So when I come in here, it's nice and handy. But I guess that's a good way to hang it if you don't want to if you have metal like I do, and you don't want to put holes in it because you might move it, just use a command strip. So I'm going to go ahead, power this on. 72, we're going to turn this down to the lowest setting. It's all the way down. I'm going to turn on turbo. It turned on. It's cold. I'm going to let this run for a while. I'm going to go outside, check the outdoor unit, and we'll check condensate lines. So that's good. The indoor unit turned on. It's pumping cold air. The outside unit is on. I don't even know if you can hear that. It is really quiet. All right, so one thing to note with, I guess probably pretty much all AC units, you're gonna hear a kind of a slight hissing sound, and what that is the coolant refrigerant running through the lines. So that's normal. You're going to hear that when you start or stop them. They will continue to make a little bit of noise for a little while as the refrigerant all slows down and comes to a stop. One question I did get is about the excess line set. And in the manual, it says that you need to lay those horizontally. I didn't like that, so I coiled mine up vertically. I did call my contact at MRCOOL, asked them about it. I said, hey, is there any problem with this being coiled up vertically? Because I guess the concern would be that oil would settle in the bottom of those lines. They said, nope, it's fine to either do this, your excess line set vertically or horizontally. So I feel like it looks a lot better vertically, and it just works for my situation a little bit better. So manual does say to lay it horizontally, but it's fine vertically. So we're gonna go in here and see if we can't see if any condensate's starting to come out. It might take a little bit longer for the pan to fill up. Like I showed you before, here's the trap that I put in, and the reason I have a trap here is because this goes into my sewer system, so that needs to be full of water so gases can't come back up in here. What do we do during the off season? It's one of those things that this is out in the garage. I'm going to have to keep an eye on it. There is a chance that if you don't use this for a long time, the water could evaporate out of the trap, then letting gases come out. So it's just something you have to check. I'm not too concerned about it. I'll make sure it's not hard for me to add water if I need to, if that happens. So that's on the opposite side of this storage room I have. It's just an unfinished room. And my wife has put all of the stuff back against the wall already. It's great. But the condensate line comes down, goes through there, and then it pops out right there underneath there. So we will watch out there to make sure that condensation is coming through. And you know what? I probably could go ahead and turn this unit on too. While I'm at it, and check this one for cooling as well, because I need to check that condensation line too. Alright, so that one's kicked on. Initial thoughts on them turning on, they're really quiet. Very minimal noise. Even the outdoor unit's pretty quiet. So I'm gonna let all these run for, I don't know, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, just so I can see the condensation is exiting the units like I want. And then we will switch modes and go to heating mode. All right, I can hear that it's draining. I don't know if you can see that. So we are good there. Now let's go inside, check this one. It should be about where the condensation is coming out of the pan as well. You can pre-fill the pans if you want. Yep. See it there coming down. So during testing, you want to make sure when you're cooling, you get to this point where the condensation is coming down so you know that everything is flowing right. So it says to keep the drain tube on the bottom. You just want to make sure it doesn't get pinched, which you just have to check. I routed mine through here, just filled that with spray foam to hold that, and then it angles all the way down over there to the kitchen on the other side of that wall. I have 2 units on interior walls, which that's how I handle the drain there. I have 2 units that are going to be on the outside wall. One's installed in our office, which the drain line just goes outside and drains outside, and then I will have my 4th unit will be in here in this room. There's a little basement underneath this, and so I want to keep this, be able to heat and cool it. So I think we're good on the cooling mode, so I'm going to try the heat mode and see what happens. Well, I set it to heat. It's probably going to take a few minutes for it to turn on. Oh boy, yeah, it's got some heat to it. So it finally kicked on. It took I would say it took 3 minutes for it to switch around and start heating. So the condenser runs in reverse. I'm sure it takes a little bit of time for it to do whatever it needs to do out there, but the heat definitely works. Alright, so I have the heating mode on, so we'll go out here and see if we're getting any condensation. Yeah, right there. So when it's running in the heating mode, condensation will come out right there. You can put a little drain on there, but that's why you set these up off the ground, so in the winter, if this starts to freeze, you don't end up blocking this. But the cold air coming out of here right now is crazy. And it's 85. I know I got a sweatshirt on, but that's because I've been in the AC. I'm gonna go turn this off because it's working fine. Get this back into the cooling mode. All right, guys, so I have tested my units. Everything's working the way it should, so I'm pretty happy with how this install went. I guess my overall thoughts, I've had this installed for a couple weeks. Obviously, I haven't been using it on the heating cycle. I've been using it on the cooling, and it has performed, I guess, above my expectations. A couple things that I've noticed as far as just the operation is, one, it is very quiet. The indoor units are very quiet, and then the outside unit is very quiet. So I'm pleasantly surprised with that. As far as its efficiency, it seems to be doing very well. It keeps our spaces cool. Even I've been running it a little bit in the large part of the garage, which my eventual plan is to put a wall in. So I had that sized for a space that is about half the size that unit's in right now, and it's actually cooling the whole space. Now I will tell you this, I have closed cell spray foam in those walls and an R60 in the ceiling, so that might have something to do with it, but it is cooling that space very well. So overall, very happy with the performance of how it runs. As far as the installation, I thought that the instructions really well written and done. I feel like they were easy to follow. I would say probably the most difficult part for somebody to do would be the electrical, and that basically just comes down to whether you have the experience with the electrical or not. And I guess the part that I would say would probably trip people up is where they talk about an air switch, stuff like that, in your main power. So in the manual, it specifically says to have a qualified, certified electrician do the main electrical hookup, which every person needs to know what their limitations are. So if you aren't capable of doing that, then you definitely shouldn't do it. I've done a lot of that. I worked for an electrician for a long time, so I did all my own hookup myself, and I thought that it was very simple, especially the hookup to the unit. All of the wiring harnesses that come with the units are all numbered, labeled, so there's not a whole lot of thought that has to go into which terminal the wires get hooked up to. So overall, I feel like this is, with somebody with some DIY capabilities, this is a very doable installation for somebody. All the line sets are pre-charged. I thought hooking up the connections was very easy. I don't have a torque wrench, so I just used 2 open-end crescent wrenches. I got the fittings tight and then just gave them a little extra force, and I've had no leaks or anything like that. So I would definitely recommend a MRCOOL mini split to somebody that is looking for a DIY option. I'm the type of person that always wants to save money if I can. That's why I self-built my entire home myself, because I couldn't afford to have somebody do it. So this is right up my alley, and I enjoyed it. I would say for somebody that has the time, you could easily do this installation in 2 days. If you had 2 full days to work at it, you could get it all installed. Now it took me a while because obviously I have a lot of stuff going on, so I was doing this in my spare time, so I would work on it an hour here, an hour there, but it went very well. Directions were very good, and I'm super pumped about it, and very happy. I have one more head that I'm going to install in this studio, but I can't install that unit until I get all the walls the way I want them and stuff like that. So I held off on that one. So I have 3 out of the 4 up and running, and I am pretty pumped up. So I guess that's going to be a wrap on this video. If you guys have any questions, concerns, comments, leave them. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, share us with your friends, and we will catch you on the next video.